Breakfast today, disabled people from Brighton and Hove say they feel trapped by no-go areas in the city. This is according to a new report by the Fed Centre for Independent Living, and it suggests that uneven pavements, things like street furniture, lack of drop curbs, all play their part in making Brighton and Hove inaccessible in some areas for wheelchair and scooter users. Let's talk to the author of the report, John Hasty. Hello, John. Good morning.
Hello.
How bad is it? I mean, is it just inconvenient, or does it really stop you going there?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of improvements in the last 15 to 20 years. That's one thing we found. But no, there really are some areas that are, well, frankly, quite dangerous, particularly with some of the drop curbs because of obviously the hills of the city. The actual state of the drop curbs as well can mean it's actually, in fact, dangerous, and you could fall out your wheelchair going around some parts of the city. Right.
Are you critical of the council, John, or do you think they're not spending enough on sort of adapting curbs?
Well, I mean, certainly they do make changes, and you can see improvements over time, but I think more could be done. I mean, I think more investment is put into kind of cycling and walking than actually is just making sure there's a safe route for wheelchair users to get across the city.
Does it affect people's lives, or do they just choose to go somewhere else? I mean, we did have a text in from Kenny, who's a disabled wheelchair user, and he says, things are so much better than they used to be. You say you can't go to some places, but you can go to others. Is it really that much of a problem?
I'd agree, yeah, there certainly are big improvements, but I think there are some areas that simply have done nothing. And the thing is, the legislation is in place, but because it's not enforced, then I think some venues have become complacent, really. And I think in some cases we're not calling for, the most inaccessible venues where nothing can be done to be improved. We recognise there are problems in some places which should simply can't be improved. But in some cases it's just a case of getting a ramp, and then you suddenly made your business accessible to a whole range of disabled people and all their kind of spending power. So I think definitely more can be done in a lot of places.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. John Hasty there. We're going to get your examples of no-go areas in Sussex. And how does it affect you? If you're a wheelchair user, I mean, how does it change the way you operate and the way that you enjoy yourself when you know that there are difficulties out there getting around? Simon Doughty's on the line. Hello, Simon.
Good morning, Neil.
Good morning. Now, you're not a wheelchair yourself,
no, I'm not.
But your other half is.
Yeah, that's right.
And how does this affect you guys when you're out together?
Well, we always plan ahead anyway, and it's not so much places that we won't go, it's more the times that we won't go, just because the sheer volumes of people in Brighton. Like, for example, we won't go into Churchill Square in the middle of a Saturday afternoon because there's just too many people. That's more of a problem for us than the accessibility issue.
Does it? I mean, does it feel isolating in some ways to be in that situation or not?
It depends if you've got a chip on your shoulder or not. To be fair, a lot of people excuse me, a lot of wheelchair users can come across as, oh, woe is me, look, I can't do. We try and focus on what we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're obviously, I mean, you can't stop the crowds in Churchill Square.
No, exactly.
I can't see a way around that, actually.
No, exactly. So we work around it. We'll go either a different time, or if there's a specific shop we want to go to, we'll leave a lot more time to get to the shop and to get in and out of the specific shop or venue or wherever it may be. Right.
When you're planning your routes, and then are there places in Brighton Hove you say, right, we're definitely not going there?
There's this is it. I think it's in bed at the minute, but there's a few restaurants that she's been to with her mum that are particularly difficult to get in and out of in Brighton. But again, as the gentleman said before in the text, the text that you read out before, said that there's been a massive improvement in recent years.
Yeah, okay, so it's not all bad news.
No, not at all.
The lanes are difficult, so I understand. Well, I mean, you would expect because they're narrow anyway. But I mean,
exactly.
it is a shame, isn't it? Because I mean, they're iconic parts of Brighton, and you wonder whether or not there's something simple that could be done just to open them up a bit more.
You could argue that, but then something that's hundreds and hundreds of years old that was built in a time where there weren't wheelchairs and there was never going to be, that wasn't on their mind. It was what it was. So you just have to adapt to it, to some situations, rather than kicking up a fuss saying, well, you've got to do this for us.
Very pragmatic, Simon. Thanks very much indeed. Let's get your thoughts on this. 81333, start your text with radio, or you can call me, 08459 570057. I mean, is it just like this? It's as good as it's going to get for disabled people in wheelchairs. We've moved a long way forward, and frankly, it just can't get any better because of the nature of our historical streets. Or do you get frustrated? You think, God, just one drop curve there would open up the whole street? Let me know. 81333. Start your text with radio. Today, uneven pavements, street furniture, lack of drop curbs, causing some areas of Brighton and Hove to be no-go areas for disabled people, according to a report by the Fed Centre for Independent Living. Let's have a word with Sophie, who's a wheelchair user. Hello, Sophie.
Hi, morning.
Morning. So tell us about the areas of Brighton which you think are particularly hard.
Well, I've only just moved here recently down from London, so I'm still early days, but there are quite a few areas of Brighton that are quite difficult to access. I mean, not only from the situation where obviously it's quite hilly, as I'm sure you're aware, which is quite difficult to negotiate, but also the pavement, some of the shops, some of the restaurants, a lot of the pubs and bars are not only difficult to access themselves, but also don't have some of the facilities that we might need, such as disabled toilets and things like that. But yeah, also there's the problems of things being out on the streets and the curbs, as you said, no drop curbs. I mean, all over, Kemp Town's quite difficult to access, South Lanes. It varies throughout Brighton, but yeah, it is a difficult city to navigate.
So when you moved into Brighton, did you sort of have exploratory sort of trips to see? Right, I'm going to be bold. I'm going to see where I can get to.
That's exactly what we did. I actually moved to Hove in the end because it's a bit more, well, we thankfully found a great place, but it was flatter and just easier. And actually, when we came down to look at Brighton, a lot of the houses that I kind of listed to look at were write-offs the minute I got there, because I realised they were in areas, I think Queen's Park was one of the areas we looked at, and it was just completely impossible for someone like me to live somewhere like that. So, yes, it took a lot of investigating.
Yeah, Sophie, interesting. Thank you very much. Let's talk to the council then after 8 o'clock and ask whether or not they reflect on this and think they could be doing more. And we also want to know, outside of Brighton and Hove, are there any particular no-go areas if you are a wheelchair user? Where you dread going, or you just won't go because you can't get around? 81333, start your text with the word radio. At breakfast this morning, disabled people in Brighton and Hove calling for action to improve access to parts of the city. According to a report by the Federation Centre for Independent Living, uneven pavements, things like street furniture blocking the pavements, A-boards, that sort of thing, and a lack of drop curbs have made parts of Brighton and Hove no-go areas for disabled people. And it suggests that wheelchair and scooter users are feeling trapped because of inaccessible areas of the city. Earlier we heard from Sophie, a local wheelchair user, who says it can be difficult getting around.
There are quite a few areas of Brighton that are quite difficult to access. I mean, not only from the situation where obviously it's quite hilly, as I'm sure you're aware, which is quite difficult to negotiate, but also the pavement, some of the shops, some of the restaurants, a lot of the pubs and bars are not only difficult to access themselves, but also don't have some of the facilities that we might need, such as disabled toilets and things like that. But yeah, also there's the problems of things being out on the streets and the curbs, as you said, no drop curbs.
Well, Rob Jarrett is a Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care and Health. Thanks for joining us, Rob. Good morning.
Good morning.
Bit disappointing, this report for you, really, isn't it?
Well, I agree that we could do more. We've got a sort of long backlog historically of places that need to be improved. We are spending money on putting new drop curbs in. We spent about £100,000 this year putting in drop curbs, and we will do the same again in the next financial year.
Right, OK. It's interesting that I've got a figure here of £25,000 spent on drop curbs last year. You say 100,000.
That's £25,000 directly from council money, and then another £80,000 from developers when we require improvements in an area.
So the amount of money that the council has spent on drop curbs is 25,000.
Yes.
OK, fair enough. I'm glad we got that straight. It doesn't seem like an awful lot of money, really, doesn't it? It's one person's salary.
No, it's not a lot of money, but the money from the transport budget has to be spent on a lot of things like road maintenance as well. And unfortunately, the transport budget for next year has been reduced by £200,000 to help pay for the council tax freeze.
So, really, the message is we can't afford it. If you're disabled, then you've got to lump it.
No, I wouldn't say that. We are going to spend some money on it. Also, money that gets spent on other schemes, like the Old Shoreham Road cycle lane, where we put in a new project like that, we also, at the same time, improve wheelchair access. So all these side road junctions will have a level with the pavement, so we won't even need a drop curb in those places. And where we make improvements to other road junctions, such as the bottom of Gelston Villas, then we make sure that we put in a good drop curb at those places as well. So other money will also result in improved wheelchair access.
OK, so over time things are getting better. Rob Jarrett, thanks very much indeed. Let's talk to Chris Kift now, who's a wheelchair user. Hello, Chris.
Hello.
Does that satisfy you, some of those answers?
Not really. The thing is, this cycle thing comes up all the time. Part of the problem of getting around Brighton is cycles chained to lampposts, scaffolding, and anything which blocks the pavement. And nobody seems to care about that. But I was at a meeting yesterday where somebody said about the Lewis Road Gateway that they've checked into things like cycling and walking, and I stated, well, I can do neither. Why don't you ask how wheelchair users are going to get about? There's cycling, there's walking, but all we ask for is a safe route across the city for disabled people.
Yeah, and of course, the trouble is, it's a historic city in places, isn't it? Particularly areas like the lanes. So, is it a case of you've just got to be realistic about what we can afford?
Very realistic about the fact that there are places we can't get into. Since I've used a wheelchair, I've had to virtually stop drinking because none of my locals can be converted by any way. That's because they're historic buildings. But drop curbs around, say, the lanes. And the north lanes aren't too bad, but the lanes are very, very bad. You come out of the Friends Centre, which you go to for a lot of meetings, turn left, go along the pavement, there's no drop curb, so you have to come all the way back again to Ship Street, up by the old post office to get across the road. Coming in from
to Brighton from Whitehawk, I understand you've had some problems fairly recently as well.
Yeah. Coming back along after a meeting at Robert Lodge, trying to go along Eastern Road westbound towards Sussex Square, the drop curbs don't exist. And I had to go out onto the road, which my vehicle is not insured for the road. It's Type 2, which is pavement use. But I had no option other than going all the way back down and possibly round by the seafront.
So that your only real option was to break the law?
Yeah, absolutely.
And also risk your health and well-being.
Yeah. I mean, Eastern Road in a little wheelchair, well, it's quite a reasonable sized wheelchair, but if you possibly remember, the mayor came out with me earlier this year for a trip round part of Brighton, around Kemp Town area, and she was frightened to death at some of the cases. And when we left my home, which is St James's House, out by the eastern entrance, the first thing you have to do is break the law and go down Chapel Street because the pavements aren't up to it and there's no ramps. OK,
Chris, thanks very much indeed. If you want to tell us about particular problems of no-go areas where you are in Sussex, it's 08459 570057. And if you are a wheelchair user, do you accept the council's argument that really it's a historical problem? They're trying to sort it out, but there's only there's only a limited amount, a finite amount of finance in the transport budget. You know, they're doing what they can. 81333, start your text with radio if you want to call us.